Our second panel begins now, implementing a vision for a stronger workforce system. I have the pleasure of introducing to you our next panel. Please join me in welcoming Jill Berry, First Deputy Commissioner for the New York City Department of Social Services, Janine Jones-Seo, Assistant Commissioner for Workforce One at New York City Department of Small Business Services, Cecilia Kushner, the Chief Strategy Officer at New York City Economic Development Corporation, Denice Williams, Deputy Commissioner for the New York City Department of Youth and Community Development. And our conversation will be hosted by Nicole of the New York Times. Please give this panel a round of applause to open our time together. Thank you.
Hey, hi everyone. And thank you all to our panelists for coming today. So let's dive right in. Like, we want to talk specifics today on this panel of how each agency is going to implement the vision that the mayor set out in his blueprint earlier this year. So the workforce section of that focused on connecting New Yorkers to quality jobs and in-demand skills. And I want to just start by kind of, going down the line and just talking about, how do you interpret this blueprint and what role do you see your agency playing in it? Why don't we start with Denice?
So I always think about the immediate next steps. Like I love vision, but if I'm not making moves, nothing is happening. So how many of you know SYP? Worked in SYP, okay. So everyone knows SYP. Most others don't know that we fund other workforce programs within our Workforce Connect systems. And so immediately for us, we began thinking about how are we making better connections within DYCD? Before I think about CUNY and all those others, how are we making sure young people who have a 6-week experience know about other opportunities was one of the first things. How do I make sure, and we run the youth homelessness system in New York City. We don't automatically connect the young people who are in our drop-in centers or TILs with our Workforce Connect system. So we have to do a better job internally of making those things happen. We call them service integration, as well as building on relationships that I hope to talk about later that we have with CUNY and ways that we are thinking about supporting their building out credentials and articulation from our capacity building to credit bearing, so that there are multiple pathways to have career opportunities in New York City.
Great. Good morning, everyone. So I work for the Economic Development Corporation. We're not per se a workforce agency, but the way this work translates for us is we really look at industries of the future. Many of them are based on innovation, but where we think there's going to be an enormous amount of jobs created over the next decade, tech being the one in the last 15 years we're focused on. And what we've realized is often because we did not look at workforce and education and opportunities for all New Yorkers to pipeline into these jobs at the very beginning of investing in an industry, we miss a big opportunity. So for example, this morning, one thing that came out of blueprints, the mayor right now, and I'm really sad to miss it, but very excited to be here, is announcing a really large project with CUNY and DOE and the life science and public health sector in Brookdale. So Kibbs Bay, just 10 blocks away from here on the east side, is the epicenter of life science and bioengineering and the biotech industry in New York City, which is an industry that has been growing tremendously over the next 10 years throughout the nation, and that will continue. And we really want to make sure that New York City captures a number of jobs there, but we haven't seen good connection between students going up in the DOE and going into CUNY to be able to access these jobs. And these are real economic mobility occupations that allow really good wages, even with a 2-year degree. And so what we're really doing is creating a very strong connection and pipeline in an integrated campus that will have industry with life science employers, internships, DOE students, CUNY students, bringing 4 different schools and 4 different programs for CUNY that are scattered throughout the entire city into one location. So really making sure that we're pipelining New Yorkers into future-focused economy is, I think, the way we are going to be focused as an agency over the next few years.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So first, I wanted to say how great it is to be in the room with so many workforce professionals. in person, right? And so many of you that I've worked alongside within my career over the last 10 years. So please, I can't wait to get out there. Come see me. Can't wait to hug people. But the second thing I say is the obvious, right? The last 3 years have been absolutely devastating for all of us. And I think if there's any silver lining, it is that it has illuminated a lot of the inequities that have been embedded within the workforce system. So within that, what I'm really the most excited about is this administration's commitment to really ensuring that there is a more equitable economic recovery. And we're really doubling down on that SBS. So that really means expanding and increasing the services that we offer to targeted populations. Many of the times it's women, racial minorities, people with disabilities, justice involved, far too many people that have been left out. And I see this as a really great opportunity for us to really step up and be really innovative in terms of the way that we service people and not just connecting them to jobs, really offering them the wraparound services and support that they deserve. In addition to that, we have some really great and cool innovative partnerships that we're going to be having, not only with city agencies, but with partners really all across New York City. So we're really excited about that and really deepening our knowledge and commitment.
Good morning, everybody. So we're very excited that we were a recipient of an $18 million grant from the U.S. Economic Development Administration under the Good Jobs Challenge program for our PINK Pathways to Industrial and Construction Careers. And so PINK is, we've designed PINK in a way to give access to our clients, cash assistance, SNAP clients, as well as public housing recipients, access to good, well-paying jobs, often union jobs in the transportation and construction sectors, places that our Black and brown women have not traditionally had access to these jobs. And we've designed this program in such a way that our clients, they don't have time for a 6 to 9 month training program. They want to get back to work. They don't have the patience to sit through those programs. And so many of the training programs that our clients go to, they have these unforgiving attendance requirements. And again, our clients can't do that without a lot of support. So during the pandemic, we had a lot of opportunity to try out new things. And one of the programs we sent a bunch of women actually from a homeless shelter to a masonry training program. And with the support of the shelter provider, the workforce provider, and our Business Link program, as well as the training partner, almost all of those women graduated from that program, something we don't see, right? So we're designing, thank you. So PINK, we're going to design more of these training programs that are short-term, get people to good, well-paying jobs, often union jobs right away, and give them all of the wraparound supports that they need to be successful in these training programs and keep the jobs once they get placed.
Yeah, so against the backdrop of this new blueprint is also the fact that the city is facing this looming fiscal crisis. Agencies have been asked to cut back their budgets. So in light of that, I was wondering if each of you could also talk specifically about how this could change your current programming and your contracts. Like what changes might we expect? Denice?
So as I understand it, and the mayor has professed this everywhere he's been speaking, he doesn't want service delivery cuts. And so he's trying to hold that harmless, which is pretty hard at DYCD. Like we're a contracting agency. So like 96% of our budget goes out the door, but that is his commitment. I think we are working on like 6 or 7 concept papers and new requests for proposals. I'm wondering about the impact going forward. I don't see an immediate cut to service, and a lot of you are service providers. That is my understanding. I watch every town hall he goes to because he's asked about this, so I like to hear it from myself. That's our understanding. That is what we put forward, is to maintain the service delivery. I am thinking about what will happen as we're all thinking about how to refine what we do, right? How to embed mental health supports, how to go from a few slots in work, learn, and grow to the 70,000 young people who've been part of SYP to have a realistic year-round experience. So all of the expansive ideas are the things I think we're going to have to grapple with as a community going forward. But right now, it's about, for me, thinking about with the money we have, assuming it's stable, and I think it will be, how do we do better? And how do we make the connective tissue better? I'm not saying do more with less. I personally hate that phrase, right? We should ban it from our vernacular, but doing our best with what we have to make the case for what we're doing, and that it is economic and vital to the city. That makes sense in this room. I don't think many human service providers speak the language of how we're employers. Right? I don't think we say that if you're in a homeless shelter, you know, and you're a provider or aid service provider. We are employers just as much as we deliver human services. And we need to better be able to speak that language about how many we employ. We're often the first employers from many of the communities we care about. We often create these career pathways. So one thing I encourage all of us to do is to be able to speak not just service delivery, but economic impact wherever you sit in the human service system. But from what he has said, and I take him at his word, it's been honest and direct and forthright, even when we don't want to hear it. He is trying to hold human services harmless.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on what you just said. I think a lot of what we're looking at is how every single dollar we spend is an opportunity for workforce and for pipelining. So EDC is a very large capital agency, for example. We have a $9 billion capital program, and we have one of the strongest MWB program in the entire city. With like about 40% of reach. So we're trying to make sure internally that every single time we spend on anything, we are able to also use this as a potential for workforce. Another way we're doing this, we're a very large asset manager. We have about 66 million square feet of real estate. We do a lot of real estate transaction and real estate development. And so we are trying to leverage public land in order to get private industry dollars into workforce. So if we do a really large life science project, for example, by using public land to build a new life science tower, we are going to require developer to have a fund for the next 20 to 30 years that pays for workforce programming in life science that then we can co-direct with them. So we are ensuring that we have a budget outside of the city budget that gives us some sense of stability and security, and also forges partnership between industry and workforce providers, which I think is really important in order for anything to be very successful.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of what Denice said. I don't anticipate that we'll have any service delivery cuts. What I will say is that through the pandemic, we've had some really great staff, not only at SBS, but with our vendors as well. And they were able to provide services in a very quick and adaptive way that we just didn't expect or anticipate. So I wanted to thank you for that. But also within that, there were a lot of learnings in terms of how we could do better, right? So I think it's more of how we're going to be spending our dollars, what our focus is going to be, as opposed to actual cuts. And I think with the illumination of everything that's happened over the last 3 years, I think it's almost a prime time to really start to be creative and innovative in terms of our service delivery itself. So for us, we're seeing it more as an opportunity to do more in different ways. So.
Yeah, for DSS, I mean, it's going to be a challenge, quite frankly, right? We have a pretty high cash assistance caseload right now. Our workforce programs serve the mandated cash assistance population. And we're looking at over 80,000 people that we're going to have to try to engage, give them the services they need, and connect them to jobs. What we are trying to do is a lot of what Janae said is during the pandemic, we had the opportunity to try a lot of new things and be a little bit more flexible. And we need to find ways to incorporate that flexibility, incorporate those things that we learned, and be a little bit more nimble in the future, so that we can stretch those dollars to serve people and not just have a one size fits all model, right? Because some people need more, some people need less. And that's what we're going to be looking at going forward.
Just to piggyback off of that, Jill, I was wondering if you could talk about the Higher NYC program and sort of lessons learned from the pandemic of that. And is that something that you plan to expand going forward?
Yeah, so that's actually a really great story for our agency. Our Business Link program runs Higher NYC for Health and Human Services contracts. You have the vendors have to hire one public assistance recipient for every $250,000 of contract value. And, you know, we've been administering that program for a long time, but the really great news, FY22, over 5,000 placements of public assistance recipients into jobs, real jobs, the highest number we have ever had. Yeah. The team did a great job, right? And I think, why were we so successful? Why were we so successful during the pandemic? We had people who wanted to work, right? We have a huge population of people who want to get off cash assistance. They want a job, they want to work. And many employers maybe were more willing to give people a chance, give our clients a chance in this economy when it's so hard to hire people. And that's been great opportunities for our clients. And we're really hoping that, you know, employers see these are great candidates. They work hard. They want to work. They want to go to work every day. And we want to build on that success. And we hope to keep those numbers up.
And yeah, Denice, turning to you specifically about SYP. So the mayor has announced this huge expansion in the size of that program. So I was wondering if you could talk about, you know, in terms of actually scaling that up, what does that look like? What do you need to see from the service providers for that to happen?
Well, I don't think it's just the service providers. I think critical to us all meeting the target this year was having that commitment of funding early up. If you've been in the field a long time, you know that we often get the city council money announced and all these extra slots on July 1st, right? When the program starts July 5th. Trust me, we don't like it either. So that the mayor committed to it early was very important to us all from a planning quality experience point of view. I think we have 65 providers in the portfolio. I think if we all, you know, we talk about expanding or doubling SYP, we're going to have to expand the number of providers in the portfolio. We go around saying, can you take an extra 100? Can you take an extra 200? That's not, you know, there's going to be a limit to that. So in addition to investing in the health of our current portfolio of providers, not just in SYP, but across the board, we're going to have to look at the sector and how do we expand the health of the sector through investments, but also capacity building. I think we've hit our limit. I remember one time we got funding from Wallace and they said to us, if you had all the money you wanted for after school, could you use it effectively? And the answer was no, because we didn't have sufficient system capacity. So I'm not talking about any one organization, but we need to expand the system because we've gotten a lot of money in human services under the last two administrations, which means we need more partners and healthy partners to be able to use the money well.
Yeah, and Janine, talk a little bit about, you know, lessons learned from operating the Workforce One centers during the pandemic. Like you mentioned some of these new partnerships you were thinking about, new wraparound services, you know, just going beyond job placement. You know, how do you see the kind of relationship with service providers on the actual training and upskilling front?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, the one thing that we know is communities have absolutely been devastated. And I think one of the hardest things is people just don't even know that we exist, period. Workforce One is there. So one of the things we're looking to do is really to bring services to where the people are, to make sure that we're better serving them, but we really have to serve them more holistically. And that means strengthening our partnerships. So it's something that we've done in the past, but we're really doubling down on that effort. So we're increasing our staff capacity for community partners specifically. And that's really our staff that's going out into the communities, They're partnering with organizations all across New York City, not only to tell them about the opportunities or the trainings that we have, but to get a better sense and an idea in terms of what services are available as well, so that we can really figure out how do we best leverage each other. Because it's not just a, this is what I do, this is what you do, let's hope it works out. It's really figuring out where their where that connection should and could be made to ensure that there's really a service level of a service level that's provided to a job seeker that seems seamless. And it doesn't seem that you're bouncing from one door to the next where people are going to get lost. So we're really being targeted and focused and making sure that we're connecting with more organizations, particularly within the regions or the geographic areas that have been most devastated.
Cecilia, so you mentioned kind of lessons learned from expanding the tech sector here and for kind of these new jobs of the future, making sure that they're accessible to a wider pool of New Yorkers. And I'm curious sort of what metrics you're planning to use to kind of measure that success and sort of hold the programs accountable.
Yeah, so I think the first metrics citywide that we're continuously keeping tabs on, like how is the economy growing? What type of industries are actually growing in New York City? What's our competitive advantage to try to get the biggest share of these industries we can here? And then we do a population diversity analysis, which is like, what is the makeup of workforce in these industries? And what is the makeup of ownership in these industries? And then we found that like where we can be the most useful, where our dollars actually carry the most impact, is really to focus on population specific workforce program and also diverse ownership workforce program. So for example, right now we have a venture fellow program, which is going to take 100 new entrepreneurs in the tech business, all women or people of or BIPOC entrepreneurs who we've seen have a really hard time actually entering into that field, even though it's an enormous field and one where people have been able to be extremely successful financially, and just throughout an entire year-long program, bring them to a place where they can go to venture capitalists and actually raise funding and get on their own 2 feet and be able to be successful in that world. So really targeting our dollars to specific population and to specific outcome of ownership and ability to stay in an occupation and build wealth over the long term for an individual and family is really how we're beginning to look at success for us.
All right, so unfortunately, we're at the end of our time. I know we could talk about this, for hours, but yeah, thank you again to all of our panelists.